trained, best educated, best equipped, best prepared troops refuse to fight. Matter of fact, it's safe to say that they would rather switch than fight.
Another summer. Sound of the funky drummer. Music hitting your heart, cause I know you got soul. Hey, listen if you're missing, y'all. Swinging while I'm singing. Hey, giving what you're getting. Knowing what I know in. While the black band's sweating. In the rhythm I'm rolling. Gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey, our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. 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 We got to fight the powers that be. As the rhythm's designed to bounce with calcium that the rhyme designed to fill your mind. Now that you realize the prize arrives, we got to pump the stuff to make it tough. From the heart, it's a start, a work of art to revolutionize, make a change, nothing strange. People, we are the same. No, we're not the same, cause we don't know the game. What we need is a way.
Hey! You got to pay back. Revenge. I'm mad. Got to get back. I need some get back. Payback. Payback. That is. Payback. Revenge. I'm mad to get down with my girlfriend. That ain't right. Whoa! Smoking. Hollering, cuss. You wanna fight? Payback is a thing you got to see. Hell, never do any damn thing to me. Sold me out for chicken change. Told me they had it all arranged. They had me down, and that's the bank. But now you're punk. You got to get ready for the big payback. That's where I land. Oh, for the big payback. I can do wheeling. I can do dealing. But I don't do no damn squealing. I can dig rapping.
Thank you for joining us for Weekdays Live with Reverend Al Sharpton. Take the time to share this broadcast right now. Tell your friends it's time to keep it real with Reverend Al. Comment your questions now in the chat or call Reverend Al Sharpton directly on air at 877-532-5797. Now stay tuned for Reverend Al.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton. As you watch the broadcast, support National Action Network. Go to www.nationalactionnetwork.net and be involved. You can join, take your membership right online, www.nationalactionnetwork.net. Getting ready to start the program, but we need you to be part of the movement.
Children that love me, I'm a victim of police brutality.
Many years ago, I met a young man who had written a book that had caught the imagination of the nation. And he went on and did great work at Robin Hood and other places. You could see early in his life the commitment and the fervor as well as the charisma. And he, at that time, no one would have imagined he would be where he is, but he is there. And he's never lost his connection to the people of all communities. And in our community, I look out, and Reverend Herbert Daughtry's here, who played such a great role. I don't know where he was sitting right there, but Reverend Daughtry's here. I see stand up one of the daughters of Malcolm X, and Dr. Betty Shabazz is with us. So let me welcome to the stage, he is the governor of the state of Maryland, the only sitting black governor in the United States, Governor Wes Moore. Come on, the governor's in the house.
Good morning. Morning, family.
First of all, I know you had to break your schedule, but you said you wanted to be here.
Yes, I wasn't gonna miss this. I wasn't gonna miss
go
this.
right back, and we really appreciate you doing that. Let me start by asking you, as a governor who sits having to deal with budget issues and servicing people all over your state, what is the state of affairs now from Washington that either helps or hinders your job as governor?
Well, first I want to say how thankful I am for you, Rev, and for your leadership. This brother, Reverend Sharpton, and your voice, your vision, your passion, your leadership, and your friendship, it means the world to me. It means the world to all of our communities. And I just want to say how much we thank God for you and how you continue to push us forward. And also, by the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to all my Maryland folks. I know our leader, Senator Larry Young, and all of our Maryland folks. Respect, family. So, you know, the thing that I came into this process saying this, and we've been preparing for what this administration could be for a year prior to the administration coming on board. But we realized very early and very quickly that there was no way you could actually prepare for what we're seeing right now. And I said, listen, I'm not, you know, I was clear that, you know, I represent a state of 6.5 million people who I will represent in every single way that I can. I'm always going to protect my people. And I also know this, is that while I will work with anyone, I will bow down to no one. And this onslaught that we are seeing is staggering. Where I say, listen, I have taken one vow and 2 oaths in my life. I made a vow in front of God and my wife, and the oaths that I've taken, I took an oath to, when I became the governor, to protect the Constitution and the laws thereof, and I took an oath when I joined the Army. And hoorah. And the oath said that we will protect against all dangers, foreign and domestic. And what we are seeing right now is the danger is actually coming from the federal government, not the federal government. It's a protection of us. When you are watching these arbitrary layoffs of public servants who have raised their hands to serve, people who frankly were willing to take an oath that the people who are firing them were never willing to take themselves. When we are watching agencies whose job it is to make sure that our food is safe, whose job it is to make sure that our critical infrastructure is protected, whose job it is to make sure that our veterans are getting a proper burial, now being told that their job does not matter. When we are watching things like proposed cuts in the hundreds of billions of dollars to Medicaid, and then hearing, by the way, a Secretary of Commerce say, well, if my mother-in-law did not get her Social Security check, she wouldn't complain. You're also worth $8 billion. What we are seeing is just completely not just dangerous, but also something that we cannot sit back and just let it happen to us either. That I said in the Army, they taught us when you get attacked, you don't just sit there and take it, you mobilize. And so that's exactly what we are doing in the state of Maryland, where people are saying we are seeing the power of the federal government. Yeah, but I'm about to show you the power of a governor, and the power of states, and the power of communities to make sure that our people are protected. So that's why if you look at what we're doing in the state of Maryland, where we've said not only have we stood up units and done things like enhance unemployment insurance for our people to make sure that they know they will be supported in this time of need. Not only are they doing things, for example, like making sure that we are streamlining them into available state jobs, where we have a shortage of tens of thousands of educators, for example, in the state of Maryland. And if I have people who are qualified and who are willing to serve, we are going to make sure we're reducing the red tape and get them inside of classrooms, get people inside of hospitals and inside of nursing positions, make sure that available jobs, we're filling them, and also making sure we're working with the private sector. Because I was talking with a tech CEO, and he told me, he said, listen, you tell me you got a PhD with a TS clearance who's been working at NIH, who's now out of a job, I want to know his name. And we're going to make sure that they know their names, because our people have to be protected. But the thing I will say, and I'll say is this, is that it's also important to remember that we have seen challenge before, y'all. I come from a state that is a direct legacy of Harriet Tubman. I come from a state that's a direct legacy of Frederick Douglass. I come from a state that's a direct legacy of Thurgood Marshall. And so when we think about how difficult this moment is right now, I think about a hypothetical conversation that I would have with Harriet Tubman, or actually I should call it General Tubman, because last year I actually used the power of a governor and I actually made Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman is now a General Harriet Tubman. And I commissioned her as a general. But I think about a hypothetical conversation that I would have with General Tubman, telling her how difficult it is right now, telling her how tough we have it. And I think about what her response would be. Hearing her tell me about how difficult this moment is. That's what gives us strength. We've seen this before. And still I rise. And that's exactly the path and the focus that we are going to have in this moment moving forward.
Governor, let me ask you, we saw elections yesterday. And one of the things that was of note is that in the state of Wisconsin, we saw a billionaire, you mentioned the billionaire Secretary of Treasury, we saw a billionaire outside of government, but that seems it has outsized influence. Elon Musk went into Wisconsin, spent $20 to $25 million, appeared himself, and was roundly defeated. What does the defeat in Wisconsin and even the narrowing of the vote in Florida, what does that say to you as we go toward the midterm elections and you running for re-election? Are we seeing a resistance on the electoral community to what is going on with the Trump administration?
Yeah, we're seeing power of the people. That we're seeing the fact that, listen, I'm a man of faith, and I believe in a King of Kings, and I believe in a Lord of Lords. And I know that they do not live in Washington, D.C. either. That we are seeing the people stand up. And we're seeing the people understand, and one of the beautiful things that I think we're continuing to see is there were a lot of things that happened yesterday, right? We saw the victory, the resounding victory in Wisconsin, despite the fact that you had a billionaire who tried to influence the election. You saw the narrowing of the race in Florida. You saw the members of the U.S. Senate standing up, and Senator Booker standing up. We saw protests taking place all around the country simultaneously. To protests that were taking place at Tesla dealerships, protests that were taking place in front of our federal agencies that are being shuttered and shut down. We saw people standing up. And so the beautiful thing that I think what yesterday represents is that resistance is going to take a different form all around the country. But let's be clear, the resistance is happening. People are remembering their voice. People are remembering that the power does not belong to an individual, that the power does belong to the people. And while we're continuing to see that elections do matter, and yes, Rev, I'm glad you pointed out, we have got to take these elections seriously, because we are seeing right now that elections have consequences. So we can never forget the power of our democratic enfranchisement, right? However, we are seeing people stand up, not just going to the ballot box. We're seeing people stand up in every single way to make sure their voice is heard, to make sure this moment is not missed. And I cannot stress enough that that momentum creates momentum. That push creates more push. And we have to make sure that we're leaning into it in every way that we can. All of us will have different tools. None of us get a chance to choose which moments we lead in. But when those moments come, the question is, will you lead? And this is a moment when the people have decided, yes, we will lead, yes, we will resist, and yes, we will win at the end of the day as well.
One of the challenges you've had as governor, and all governors have, is to also deal with a balanced criminal justice system.
Yes.
Where at one hand, we must protect the citizens, which you've always advocated. But on the other hand, we must also make sure there's not access and police going across over the line in terms of how they conduct themselves. Under this administration, we have concerns with Attorney General Bondi on terms of doing that. So we have our own Attorney General. Stand up, Attorney General Ben Crump is Attorney.
Yes.
My question is, how do we he didn't know I was going to introduce him. And he's standing next to one of the most, he's sitting, I should say, to one of the most prolific activists, elected activists in the country, our public advocate, Jumaane Williams.
Yeah, Jumaane.
How do we, as we deal with the current political climate, how do we make it clear that we are not anti-police, but anti-police misconduct, and that we can govern and balance in a way so we don't feed into the false depiction that the Trump people try to give, like we're just reckless and anarchists, but at the same time, protect the people in our community from criminal elements.
That's right. And first also, I want to give a shout out to my sister Jennifer Jones Austin, who I was proud to be able to work with on these issues in New York. It is great to see you, and thank you. Thank you. You know, and it's funny because when I first decided that I was going to run for governor, Rev was right, where I don't come from a political background. I don't come from a political family. I say I had to convince members of my family to vote for me when I was running for governor. and this is real talk. And it's not because my family and I are uncool. It's because there are many members of my family who just don't vote. Like, we don't come from that as a background, you know what I mean? And so for a lot of people, when I first decided that I was going to run for governor and I had no elected office experience, I was like, I'm going to run for governor. And a lot of people were like, well, where do you fall on this issue? Are you pro law enforcement or are you pro community? I'm like, I didn't know I had to choose. I didn't know I had to sit there and make a choice. And so I decided that when I was running for governor, when I became the governor, we're not going to choose. That we could both address the fact that when I was first inaugurated, that Maryland had seen the homicide rates in the state of Maryland nearly double over an 8-year period before I became the governor under the previous administration. The non-fatal shooting rate did double. Baltimore City went 8 straight years of 300 plus homicides, unabated, right? And also address the fact that Maryland incarcerated more African American young men and boys between the ages of 18 and 25 than anywhere in the country. Number 2, by the way, was Mississippi. So I said, we are going to address both of those 2 things because we don't have to choose. We can both make sure that our communities are safe and also address the disproportionate incarceration of our black boys and men inside the criminal justice system. And I said, and listen, this comes from a very personal spot because, I had handcuffs on my wrist when I was 11 years old. 11. Because we came up in communities that were over-policed and we knew it. That I watched my father die in front of me when I was 3 because he didn't get the health care he needed. I watched my mother not get her first job that gave her benefits until I was 14 years old. We don't have to choose here because our community is demanding that we don't choose. Both make us safe and make sure that you are not thinking that the definition of safe is locking everybody up. And so when we look at the work that we've done in the state of Maryland, where we have both, yes, made historic investments in local law enforcement, making sure that we can get training on board that's showing people that law enforcement can move in true accountability and full transparency, and also local supports, that we are going to work with our state's attorneys, we're going to work with our U.S. attorneys, we're all going to work with our public defenders. We are going to work with community organizations and violence prevention groups, knowing that so much of the violence is retaliatory by nature. And here's the results. Not only have we been able to address with a real sincerity what is happening with over-incarceration, but also if you look at the violent crime rates, Maryland now has amongst the most precipitous drops in violent crime anywhere in the entire country. The last time the homicide rate was this low in Baltimore City, I was not born yet. You can do both. And so that's the thing I think that Maryland is really leading on right now and helping to show that you can have real reforms. You can make sure that you're supporting law enforcement. You can make sure that you're doing the work to making sure that law enforcement moves in full accountability and full transparency. And also making sure that you can keep your community safe, but knowing that by actually focusing on true rehabilitation, true reentry services, making sure we're reducing the amount of contact that people have with law enforcement in the first place, that you're actually both creating opportunities and making people safe at the same time.
Lastly, there's been a national issue around diversity that has been prompted by this president. And one of the things we're going to do in the next 3 days is decide on which companies we're going to address that. Because people that don't want diversity in the boardroom and the C-suite shouldn't have diversity among their consumers. If you want to exclude people, then we'll exclude you, and we're going to announce that. Talk about, and we have Camille Joseph is a good example. Stand-up. She's one of our board members. Her company and her stand-up. Where we have had people that are not where they are in the corporate world because of some tokenism, but because of merit. And it's amazing to me how people can go to some schools because their grandfather went, or because of their family tree, and they are not. That's not merit. That's birth. Our grandfathers couldn't, by law, go to certain schools, and to talk about merit, I know some guys up on 110th Street that know not to have a secret meeting on Signal. So I mean, I don't know kind of merit. I don't know what kind of merit these guys have. So as one that has worked in Robin Hood, has had to deal with the private sector, and now as governor, talk about how diversity is good for business as well as good for the country.
And I love you said it, because you cannot look at some of these people who they put in these roles and think that merit was the thing that got them in those seats in the first place. You just can't. You can't. Merit. And I think about with our administration, where I think it's unquestionable. If you look at the qualifications of people that are sitting as cabinet secretaries in our administration, agency heads in our administration, the people sitting in these roles, this is the baddest, most qualified, most outstanding group of public servants that you could have. And I'm thankful that these are all people who have raised their hands to serve the people of the great state of Maryland. I also know this. It is unquestionably and by far the most diverse cabinet in the history of the state of Maryland, where close to 50% of our cabinet is African American, over 50% are women. But it's showing that excellence and an eye on equity are not competing thoughts. They're actually completely intertwined. Because if you really want to have the most outstanding organizations, make sure you have an organization that sees everybody. Make sure you have an organization where voices are all heard. And the thing that really gets me about this argument is they'll make an argument that this is, we don't want people to feel bad. And I want to be clear. Loving your country doesn't mean lying about its history. You want to have a conversation about what makes America great. What makes America great is the uniqueness that this has been a country that is actually, despite a very uneven past, still can have an opportunity for each and every one of you to be here. Still can have an opportunity for the blessing of a Reverend Sharpton. Still can have an opportunity that you can have a person who was raised by an immigrant single mother, a person who joined the Army when he was 17 years old and went to a 2-year college, who can now sit here as the 63rd governor of the state of Maryland. We want to have a conversation about what makes this country great. And so this idea that this is being done because we don't want people to feel bad is a farce. The reason this is being done is because they do not want people to understand their power. Because when you understand your history, you understand that nothing is impossible. And you cannot minimize me, because I know where I've come from. And I know who I've come from. You cannot tell me to sit in my place when I know my place is on a higher hill. And so this assault has nothing to do with making people feel comfortable. It's about making them feel uncomfortable, because understanding the true history, it matters. And I remember during my inauguration, we were very intentional about it, where I actually started on my inauguration morning down at the Annapolis docks. And for those who have not been there, the Annapolis docks, for all my Maryland folks know, it is beautiful. But let's also be clear, the reason we started the inauguration down at the docks is not because it's beautiful. We started the inauguration at the docks because that was one of this country's first and largest slave ports. A place that for so many people who called the state of Maryland home, that was their introduction to it. And then we started the inauguration down there with a wreath laying and a prayer to the ancestors. The ones who both made the journey to the docks and the ones we lost en route to the journey to the docks. And then from there, myself, my wife, my 2 kids, and hundreds of other people, we joined hands and we marched. We marched to the State House, a building, by the way, that was built by the hands of enslaved people. And it was at that place that I was inaugurated as not just the first black governor in the history of the state of Maryland, but only the 3rd African American ever elected in the history, as governor in the history of the United States of America. But I wanted to start the morning, and some people, they came after me literally that afternoon. He's starting with indoctrination. No, I'm starting in truth. I'm starting in history. I'm starting in making sure that the people of our state, let it never be forgotten where we've come from. Let it never be forgotten that Maryland is the northernmost southern state in the United States of America. Let it never be forgotten that some of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War actually took place on our soil. Let it never be forgotten about the origins of the Underground Railroad that run directly under the land that we walk on every day. Let it never be forgotten. And so the reason that we have to protect our history, the reason that we have to protect our past, and the reason that we have to push back against everybody and anybody who wants to try to minimize it or degrade it or erase it is not just because we are honoring the ancestors, but it's because we believe in our future. And never let them walk around with their heads held low about where they come from. I walk into every room knowing that every room I am in, I am not there because of someone's kindness. I'm not there because of someone's benevolence. I'm not there because of someone's social experiment. I'm not there because someone wanted to sprinkle diversity into the room. I am in that room because I belong there, and I'm in that room because the room will be incomplete if I was not there.
Governor Wes Moore. Governor Wes Moore.
God bless you, family. God bless you, family.
Let me say this. I thought about it when we were walking out in 2007 at this same convention and the same opening day. Ironically, we had somebody that had just come in office, like you've come in as governor, that was here for Nan. And we celebrated him going in office. And a strange thing happened. A few years later, he went further. And you're here in office, and you're governor. And I'm not starting nothing, but that guy's name was Barack Obama. Wes Moore.
It's been a long time coming, but I know
1968, Dr. Martin Luther King was killed in Memphis, Tennessee. And it has been the commitment of National Action Network to always, in the month he was killed,
dream today.